Now let's dive deep into this big LGBTQ story for today. I'm Faye Watt, and let's queer up gay culture. Could New York City's West Village be a crystal ball to the destruction of gay Wilton Manors? Marvin Gaye hums softly from a turntable in Donna Aceto's cozy West Village apartment. She smiles, saying, quote, "A day without Marvin Gaye is like a day without sunshine," end quote. Aceto has lived here for 35 years, close to the lesbian bars she once frequented. But today, the neighborhood feels different. There are virtually no gay bars just blocks from Stonewall and the launching pad of a worldwide civil rights movement. She admits, quote, "It's gotten very straight," end quote, recalling the vibrant queer community that once defined the village. Her story is one of many in the Advocate's new exploration into the gentrification of great gay neighborhoods. Once affordable havens, the West Village and perhaps tomorrow Wilton Manors face pressures from rising rents, luxury development, and small queer businesses pushed out by upscale newcomers. Randy Wicker, longtime activist and friend of Marsha P remembers when Christopher Street bustled with antique shops and gay bars. His own store closed when rent spiked from $300 to over $6,500. He says, quote, "The vibrant gay community slowly relocated," end quote. Historians like Columbia's George Chauncey trace the village's queer roots back more than a century, from World War II sailors on leave to the 1969 Stonewall uprising. But preservationists warned that without protection, these landmarks risk being erased. Councilman Eric Botcher says it plainly, quote, "Preserving queer history also means preserving queer presence. The West Village must remain a living archive of LGBTQ plus life," end quote. As rents rise in Wilton Manors, Fort Lauderdale's own gay mecca, the question looms, could the West Village be a crystal ball to the destruction of queer Wilton Manors? It is a story that Queer News Tonight will follow closely. It's also interesting to note that just this week, the iconic Out and Advocate magazines are reporting the dramatic decline in advertising support they see in their publications, largely because of the political changes over DEI. We thank our colleagues at The Advocate for helping all of us to see the changes that may be in our future. You know, as someone who spends most of my time in Wilton Manors, this story obviously feels really personal. You know, I've lived in Herald Square in New York. I lived on South Beach back when it was still kind of gay. And I even lived in the Castro in San Francisco. And I've seen it when queer spaces are popular, let's just say, right? Developers want to get their hands and their mitts on all the properties, and all of a sudden the rents start hiking up. You know, it's like, it's always the cliche thing that gays move in, we fix everything up, and then they come in and, you know, and it becomes not a inexpensive place to move into. You know what I mean? And that's the place, most of these places were places that were maybe surrounded by the hood or anything like that, that you can get a cheap place back in the day, and that just doesn't exist anymore. And, you know, people are scared that the same thing might happen in Wilton. I kind of think it's already happened. I mean, like, I don't ever hear somebody saying, "Oh, I found me a cheap little place in Wilton Manors to live at."
Yeah.
You know, like,
we're seeing this already in South Florida. I mean, look at Willie's in Wynwood that just got bought out by developers. And, you know, gentrification strikes again, right? That so many of our gay bars, you know, we've had stories in the past about the erasure of lesbian bars across the United States, gay bars, of course, but also just bars in general. I think what we're noticing for folks among, you know, in my generation are, you know, that a lot of young people would rather just, you know, be on their phone or, you know, and connect with people online than go out to, you know, get some, you know, generally pricey drinks at a bar and have a nice time at a bar. And so we're seeing the erasure of third spaces broadly, right? That you know, it's expensive to run an establishment like that, especially when you're not getting the foot traffic that you might have seen, you know, 5-10 years ago from a younger crowd that tends to, you know, historically has gone out clubbing more, has gone out to bars more. That it's no wonder that we're seeing a lot of these spaces just, you know, just completely fall apart at the seams.
so you guys are doing this.
It's interesting because a lot of times the gays get blamed for the gentrification of minority neighborhoods of like, oh, they're putting in this cool little boutique or this, you know?
Yes.
And so now I think it's like a triple-edged sword because I don't know, were you in Miami during Coconut Grove during, you know, its heyday at Lincoln Road on South Beach?
I lived on South Beach in the late 90s. That was all that time.
So I used to frequent those places all the time, and we always look back and say, gosh, well, you know, it lost its charm. It used to be such a cool space. And then you think about, when was the last time you went there? How often do you go there? And the business owners are like, yeah, when was the last time you bought anything from my store?
You're right.
You know? And the reason that they're maybe not in all the cases, but in a lot of the cases, it's because they're just not getting the business.
Yeah.
You know, Amazon, Temu, like you can get pretty much anything super
online.
cheap, you know, from China or from, you know, from Asia somewhere.
Even with the tariffs, we're still going to get anything, anytime. Yeah.
So, you know, I think the answer to this problem is that we just have to frequent these places and support the local businesses. So if you don't want your local gay bar to go out of business, you need to go, you know, and spend some money. But it's also difficult, you know, because we're in a difficult financial position, you know, and a lot of people are bracing for a very difficult next 2 years. And I saw that this year with the arts world. People are holding on to their money and not spending money on tickets.
Yeah.
So it has been like a huge decrease all across spending for the arts community, which is why we're with Daniela Levine. Cava's like doorstep, like, hey, restore the arts funding right now because we're all going to go out of business.
Oh my goodness.
You know, so it is a really difficult situation. And I think the best way that we can support our businesses, our local businesses, is by going to them, showing up for them, finding ways, even if you don't have the money to buy something, you could shout them out on your Instagram. You can find some way to help out these businesses that we want to keep here in the long term.
Yeah. Okay, but what does it make you feel when you hear Maxie, who's younger than both of us, right, say that this generation right now is not into doing that, that they'd rather talk on the phone? I mean, and by talk on the phone, I mean, you know what I mean. They'd rather connect on social media.
Never hear each other's voices by typing.
Never. Listen, I know youngsters who have full relationships with people that they have never seen in person. And like full on relationships. You know what I mean? Like, so, I mean, that scares me for future neighborhoods. You know?
And so what's interesting is now we're seeing, you know, and a lot of this, you know, sped up during COVID, right? That, you know, I became an adult in 2020 in the sort of COVID era.
At Johnson's with us. Yeah, we remember.
Right. But what's interesting now is that we are seeing folks that, you know, I'm seeing folks that are my age that are now yearning to go back to those spaces, you know, but 5-year delay, right? But now, right. But now we are seeing young people that are saying, no, look, we're, you know, that these, you know, they're hearing these stories, right? Of, from when clubs were actually vibrant, you know, active and lively spaces.
Places to meet people.
Exactly.
And to commune with one
and
another.
I think that there's a real yearning among young people to build back third spaces, to return to patroning these spaces in a way that we have not been sort of conditioned to want to do.
Perhaps they need to like add some apps or some other ways that you get maybe your generation. It's like, okay, you have a relationship online, but on Wednesdays at Willie's, like, everybody comes and you can meet your people online.
Willie,
or like
Willie's VR. Just, you know, buy the drinks as an NFT.
Something like that. Maybe they do need to cater towards that demographic and figure out kind of interesting ways to bring them into the club. I don't know.
Who knows? No, but I think that both that are going to happen, you know, especially, I mean, again, young people are looking at the government and they're not being seen, right? So when you're not being seen on that big ass picture, you need to find those third spaces. So I hope what Maxie says is true, that, you know, they'll come back 5 years later, whatever it is, and start building some of these places, you know, because wherever gay people go, the rest follow.
Yes. It's true.
Period.
We're the trendsetters.
Period. That is the big LGBTQ story for today. There is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight.